Welcome back to the second part of your suffering. I am very excited that you made your way back, even though you had delicious food and some wonderful company outside to catch up with folks. That is one of the wonderful things of being here in person, is to have a chance to connect with other people and get to know them and just live in a wonderful atmosphere of kindness and care for each other. As you remember, part one, we spent some time talking about what is mediumship in a very basic way. Talked a little bit about as well, apologies, on how there is a big component of divinity in mediumship. That mediumship fits within the understanding that God is ever present and wants us to evolve. Part two, we're going to focus a little bit more on the Spiritist practice of mediumship, which we also talked to you about earlier on, by reminding you that there is no right or wrong from our perspective. We just choose to do things a specific way because our experience with mediumship and the knowledge that we have gained since we started studying mediumship in the very beginning of Spiritism, and that is how it came about, has led us to believe that there are ways that might be very beneficial for us to face and tackle and carry out mediumship in general. So the second part, we're going to talk to you a little bit more about mediumship in a specific way and within the Spiritist group and why we do it that way. Well, obviously we'll take questions as well, but we aim to address one of the most frequent questions that I get when people are interested in mediumship is, what is it that you guys really do, right? Because people understand the concept of communicating with the spirits, but they're curious about what happens in a Spiritist group or center when they can't often see it, because our mediumship meetings are often private. And there's a reason for that, and the reason is simple. It takes time for us to get to know each other and work together. We'll talk about it. But they want to know because the idea and the images that we have of mediumship out in the world, especially here in the United States, are somewhat different than what we do in the Spiritist group. We may be familiar with great spiritualist mediums, John Edwards and John from Prague, all kinds of folks that have either TV shows or that do a lot of validation, right? They are still working on making sure that people understand that the phenomena exists and that it is possible. So you see them doing readings, right? There's, and which is wonderful. That makes a lot of sense to us. We, Spiritists, just focus on the spiritual implications of accepting the spiritual world exists, right? When you're not yet completely sure that the spiritual world exists, it makes a lot of sense, like we ourselves have done in the beginning of Spiritism, to seek the validation, to seek, like, is it really there? Do the spirits exist? Can they give us messages that we are not aware? How do we know it's they who are talking? But once we established that early on within Spiritism, we kind of moved on to the spiritual and emotional and ethical implications of life after life. And let me walk you through this a little bit before we dive in. My point here is this. Once you are truly satisfied that there is life after life, right? That the physical body perishes, but you do not, because you're not your physical body. They're just clothes, temporary clothes. Once you know that, then one of the next questions that comes to your mind is, what happens after my physical body dies? Well, we go into a spiritual world. What happens there? And then once we learn that there is reincarnation, that we come back, that is another big jolt on our ethical model. Because once we understand that, in fact, we are in a learning trajectory of growth through our many lifetimes in this planet, we are led to the conclusion, to the undeniable conclusion, that we need to reevaluate how we build and maintain relationships with each other. Why do I say that? Because if you do not believe that there is life after life, or that there is, and then you're going to go into eternal salvation or damnation, whatever your faith is, which is perfectly fine, I would argue that it's understandable that you may choose to perhaps not work on the difficult relationships you have. You may see, you know what? I'm going to die anyways. I don't need to work with these people. Might as well kick them out, or I will step on them to get whatever it is that I want, because you only live once. I understand that behavior if you do not accept life after life. Now, when you do, though, and you understand that there's reincarnation, your answering of throwing other people under the proverbial bus to get what you want starts to be a difficult argument to make. You follow me? Because if you know that when you harm others, you will be responsible for that, and you know that there's life after life, you may not have to deal with the consequences of your acts now. But eventually, in the great scheme of things, you will have to deal with the consequences of your acts. Right? When you write a check, it will hit your bank account. It might not hit it today. It might not hit it tomorrow. It might not hit it in the next 6 months. But at one point in time, the universe will cash the check. And if you forget what balance you had, or if you didn't have enough, the check's going to bounce back to you. And there will be a non-sufficient funds fee added on top of that. I use a very daily example, even though you guys probably don't even use checks anymore. You're like all contactless pay, Apple Watch, or whatever it is, because you guys are all so young and hip. And you know, I don't know if you know this, but there are two types of hip people. There's hip and hip replacement people. Right? So I hope you're the hip kind, not the hip replacement kind, because that's a lot of effort. But anyways, I digress easily. As you can see, my brain is really small. It goes in all different ways at once. But let's focus back on where we were, which was, we were talking about checks. All right, got it. Remember that. So cause and consequence is a natural act of life. And I mean spiritual life. Everything in nature has a consequence and a cause. If something happened, it's because it was caused. Right? In fact, we even see that in the laws of nature and physics. We have Newton's laws, right? Laws of motion. For every action, there isn't a reaction, and so forth and so forth. But the point is, if there are events in your life today that you cannot estimate their causes, how they started, it is likely that they have their causes in a previous life. Right? If you know what caused your current situation, then there's an explanation. You can find the cause. But if you can't find the cause of the trouble you're having, chances are it is a cause from a previous lives for some actions and some acts that you are not fully aware of, which is a good thing that you're not fully aware of. Because if it were good for you, you would know. But sometimes we get so stuck on things that it's good to have what I call the Men in Black memory wipe, right? So that you can move on, right? Otherwise, you're so worried about that, so you don't know how to move forward. And I think it is really a divine gift, as we see the Spirits tells us in the Spirits book, that we have our memories temporarily subsided or lost while we take the new physical body, so that we can give ourselves a chance to start again and really move forward. Otherwise, we might remember things, and we might not remember so many great things about us, and that might hinder us for the time being. But my point being here is, if we believe in the existence of the Spirit and reincarnation, we need to necessarily change the way we act. And that ultimately is what we are called to do. To revolutionize ourselves in such a way as to become better people, which in turn leads us to happiness. And we know that a lot of that has to do with the way that we interact and help other people too. I would venture a guess that one of the moments that were the happiest in your life was when you were doing good to somebody else. You were helping others, or you were with others that you cared, doing wonderful things, sharing special moments. And so one of our long-term goals as a spirit is ensure that we have fixed these relationships that we've had in the past to have really positive ones. And as we move forward, you know here what's going to happen. We're going to have wonderful relationships with people. And imagine how wonderful it will be when we walk in a room one day where everybody in the room cares deeply for us and we for them. Now imagine if the world were like that. Wonderful, it will happen. It will not happen in our lifetime. Sorry to say it to you. But the good news is, we're not just one lifetime. So we ought to invest in the world today so that we can reap the benefits when we come back, right? It's just a smart perspective. Even if you want to be selfish in a spiritual way. Be and do everything you can today so that you can enjoy it later, right? But as we return to mediumship, our point here is we learn by doing, and we learn by helping others. So Spiritist mediumship, in a way, has transitioned from being one where we're seeking validation and proof that the phenomena and that the spirits exist, to one of how can we help ourselves and others find their way to balance again? How can we help them restore their relationships with others and with themselves? Because it's important for us to have a productive relation with ourselves. Sometimes we are our harshest critics, and we get stuck on things. So we know that as we elevate others, we elevate ourselves. So as we help others, we help ourselves. So mediumship, from a Spiritist perspective, has also taken that role of serving others to better serve ourselves. And that's why I say that mediumship within the Spiritist perspective is a team effort. Because we also understand, given the examples of the most sublime soul we know that has been to date on this planet, the Christ, that he too assembled a team. And that he too put them forth to help the world carry out his message. But you say, how does that apply to mediumship, Daniel? I really don't get it. Right? What are you talking about? Are you just trying to fill the time again until more pizza arrives? No, there will be no more pizza today. We already ate enough, people. Pipe down. Okay. But I want to equate mediumship and the act of producing or communicating with the spirits to something beautiful. Something that is artistic and technical in a way. And the image that comes to mind is music. Right? So when we embrace the mediumship perspective, we shift the kind of music that we do. And my question for you then is, what kind of music would you like to have? Would you like to have a one-man band playing at your birthday party? Or would you perhaps like to have an orchestra? Right? Sometimes the one-man band is fun. But for the long term, you might get better music out of the orchestra. And the other question is, if you need help, who would you like to come to your rescue? Would you like that guy there to come help you out? Or would you like to come and have help from these 50 people? Right? So our posture in Spiritism is to take a collaborative approach that will help us, is to take the orchestra approach. But then, what does the orchestra have to do with mediumship? Everything. A mediumistic meeting within the Spiritist context is analogous to an orchestra playing in a beautiful piece of music. Why? They're all together with different talents and different abilities and different roles to play in the execution of something beautiful that benefits many at the same time. It does not matter whether you are the conductor, the first violin, the oboe, whatever the oboe is, the trombone, right? Or the guy that, the percussion that maybe sometimes hit that once in the whole piece. Boom! I don't know if you heard that guy. I love that guy. If I had a job at the orchestra, I want to be that guy. Right? Like, oh, the violin's playing and everything else, and there's always one guy goes, and then there's a xylophone. Boom! Like I want that scholarship, to go to college, right? But all of them have a role to play. And the beauty of the orchestra is manifold. One of them is that there's so many individual talents in there that you get to learn a lot. Even if you just playing the violin over here, you will have to learn how the other instruments act and what is the right time for them to come in and when is the right time for you to come in and how to work together. Another wonderful benefit, of course, is If you're having an off day, if you're not well on that day, you're one piece of the orchestra. The orchestra will carry you home. Now, if you're a one-man band and you're having a bad day, there will be no music. Do you see my point here? So when you're trying to produce music and do something beautiful, being part of a team, an orchestra, has lots of advantages. So the Spiritist mediumistic practice is one that is guided by the idea that teamwork makes the dream work. The music is also louder, right? Because of the volume, when it acts together, it amplifies itself. Two violins playing together in sync is louder than one violin, right? And here's an orchestra with probably like a little bit more than maybe 50 people or so. I don't know if you know this. I learned recently that it's kind of not a rule of thumb, but like a philharmonic is generally like 50 to 100 people. And if it's a smaller orchestra, it's a chamber orchestra, like it's under 50. I still think 50 is a lot, but you know. So it takes a lot of effort to put these people together, to play the same music. It takes a lot of learning to do all the stuff, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that if we want to. But it's a beautiful thing when it happens. But then you're saying, but then that's a really nice poetic example, but a Spiritist mediumistic meeting has nothing to do with an orchestra. I mean, there's 50 people there. There's never 50 people in a Spiritist meeting. Aha! I beg to differ, sir. I beg to differ, sir. My point is, the mediumistic meetings that take place in our Spiritist centers are actually quite crowded. And we'll talk a little bit about that. But I wanted to talk to you first about how the meeting actually takes place, because some people want to know. And talking about it sometimes is not as enlightening as seeing it. Not that we are going to do a mediumistic meeting right now, we're not. I'm just saying visually so that we can kind of have a sense of how that goes, right? So the way that we would generally do, and are you guys willing to kind of move around a little bit? Yeah. All right, so can we do a favor? Could you guys in the middle stand up and just go to the sides? All right. So we need the empty space there. Yeah, you just kind of hang out there a little bit, right? We're not going to move the chairs out of the way. It would be nice if we have a table. But, you know, mediumship meeting has a couple of components to it. One of them is we're going to need mediums. Otherwise, it's just a group, a regular study group, right? So let's just pretend for today that we have 4 mediums. So who wants to be a fake medium today for our purposes? Thank you for volunteering. You guys are fantastic. I didn't even need to ask. You're voluntold. Wonderful. So can 2 of you come in one of these rows? And can the 2 of you over there go in another row? Back a little bit more. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you guys. No, sorry. Go in the 3rd row. The 2 of you, can you go in the 3rd row? Yeah. And then can you also slot in over there on the 6th row? All right. So look at each other. All right. Pretend you're sitting at a table. All right. So can I just have you step out right now? We're just going to have 4 right now, okay? So pretend that you're sitting at the table. Imagine these are the mediums sitting at the table. Okay? So these are the people who are going to be studying and concentrating. But we don't need just mediums by themselves either. We also need counselors, people who are going to actually talk to the spirits. Because the role of the medium would be to be an intermediary about things, but we need people who are going to be able to talk to the spirits and counsel the spirits who are coming in seeking for help. Because I don't know if I told you, but the purpose of our mediumship meeting is to help others and learn doing that. So we need, for this purposes, let's just have 2 of them, right? So who wants to be okay, you come in there, are you going to ask a question or you want to volunteer to be something? Then come on down to the Wheel of Fortune. You want to volunteer too? All right, watch out so you don't bump at this lovely camera over here. Can you sit in between the 2 mediums over there? You 2 mediums over here? All right, so we now have 6 people, right, that we can see. 6 people that we can see. The people on the outer edges are mediums. The way they sit, it's not mandated. We're just doing something over here to kind of illustrate visually right? So understand that this will vary from group to group, and every group will have their own piece. So let's pretend that right now we have a group of 6 people, right? We have 4 mediums and we have 2 counselors, but we don't have just mediums and counselors in a meeting. We also have others who are going to not neither be a medium, like communicating, nor counseling. They're going to help with vibrational assistance. They're going to help us maintain a good vibe. They're going to help us with passes as well. So we're going to ask for 2 more. 2 more. You want to come in? Come on out. All right. So can you stay here on the corner? Thank you for volunteering. Right there, right there. Yeah, that's great. Pretend it's a table. Pretend it's a table, that you're looking at the table. Who wants to be on here on the other side of the table? Thank you, thank you. Can you just go in the middle, like if you're sitting on the table, look forward? There you go. Can you come a little bit more too? Yeah, no, look this way. Say hi to each other. Hi, our meeting's about to start. There you go. So these people have come a little bit earlier. They have prepared themselves by trying to maintain good thoughts and be great. Then what generally would happen, depending on workplace, there can be a study before, a study after, there can be no study. Every group makes their own rules and what fits to them. But the general idea is that these people would be in sync and work together because something magical will happen now. The spirits will come and will communicate. That to happen, you can understand how difficult it is, because one thing that mediums are never sure of is what is fully happening, and is it really them or is it somebody else? Every medium I know has always a doubt. How do I know, remember how we were talking about, whether it's mine or not, right? So when you are doubtful about that, you don't want to expose yourself to the world. And that's one of the reasons why we make them private sessions, because we don't want all of you judging them. Because when you're under the microscope, you feel a little judged. So the reason why we don't let anybody come into our meetings is to create this atmosphere of trust between these people who are always going to be there at the assigned time. Because if they start to miss their appointments, then they are not truly serious about the work, and it will hurt the orchestra. So if you can't commit to the work, you can't play in the orchestra. Right? If you want to play every once in a while, recreationally, then find yourself a hobby. Don't mean to be rude, right? You get me? Right, because these people are counting on you, right? So if the orchestra shows up half ready, there will be no music that day. So there's a commitment here. And because there is a commitment here, they start to get to know each other. They've studied together for a while before they got here. They have studied how the mediumistic communication works. They probably have read the medium's book and the spirit's book and other groups and other books with time. They are committed. They are willing to give of themselves and of their time to try to help others, because they know that they will learn doing that. Right? So they will generally start with a prayer. Right? The format of the meeting will change with time. And they would ask for guidance for the mentors to direct the meeting, because they are truly in control, because now we know that it's Christ who directs us. Right? So we play our part in the orchestra, but the conductor is not here. We can't see the conductor. Right? We're going to talk a little bit about that in a little bit. So hold on. Right now we're doing the physical part. Are you with me? Yes. Okay. So now we're going to go into the invisible part. Who wants to be the first communicating spirit? All right, who wants to do it? Come on now, come on down. All right. So come over here to over here. Now here's the deal. You have come because you need help. Okay? You're not. Sometimes you don't even know how you got here. Somebody brought you here because they care for you. Right? So we need their spiritual mentor and guide. Who wants to be a spiritual mentor and guide? Come on down. Yes, jump at that opportunity. I would jump at that opportunity. So come over here. Hold her by the arm.
So she's this part.
Yeah, both of these are invisible. Right. You guys are, see the guys in the middle? They are the only ones that are physical. Right? All right. I meant to do that. Thank you. All right. My mom always said that if you trip, pretend that you were meant to do it anyways and just kind of keep going. I got so excited that I forgot that there's something. All right. Woo, okay. So, oh yeah, I even clicked accidentally. Thank you. All right. So you come over here and you grab by the arm, very gently and loving, right? And now you care for her so much, she's having trouble. Maybe she doesn't know that she's passed away. She needs help. So you've been preparing her for this. And now what you're going to do is you're going to politely walk her to that first medium over there. Yeah, right there. Walk her over there. There you go. Now you go really close. You guys hug the medium. There you go. There you go. Pretty close, right? So what's happening now? Now, our medium is acting as the intermediary. So now she begins to voice the discarnate spirit's concerns about what's happening, right? This is what's happening during a mediumship meeting. Now, we have a counselor right over here who would then begin to talk to the spirit through the medium and saying things like, how can we help you? What are you feeling? And then we're going to have all kinds of problems that the spirit's going to tell, right? And it won't be a very long conversation because it takes time and effort, but it will be a conversation like you're talking to a friend. And you're going to try to guide them in the right direction, right? During this period of time, depending on how it goes, our friends on the corner, who remember our vibrational assist, the two of you who are in the middle, you're going to also lend your energy sometimes because it can be difficult. So you're going to do what we call passes, which is just the laying of hands and showing some energy. So would you mind just going with your arms like this? There you go. Now, we're not seeing these two over here, the two of you over there, right? But that's kind of what's happening. And then eventually, after you're able to make way, because one great thing is happening. Because the spirit is talking to the medium, they're really sharing their energies a little bit there. And the spirit then gains a little bit of anchoring. Because now it feels like a physical body again. And it's able to calm down a little bit. Because when we lose our physical body, our mind goes everywhere because that's what we are. And we don't know what to do, especially if we don't know that we have passed. Right? So during that time, that spirit is able to calm down a little bit because it's sharing some of that tension and energy with the medium. And then you are able to talk to her in a way that maybe the mentor wasn't able to at that point in time. Because he wasn't really wanting to talk to the mentor because he wasn't even seeing the mentor because he didn't know that he had passed away. And so you go, you do a great job. Congratulations, you're doing a really great job right now. And you're talking to her, say it's going to be okay, you know, trust. You go through the process of just trying to solve her problem with her, make her see that everything's going to be okay, that God loves us. And she eventually gets to a point where she feels a little bit better. We might make a prayer in gratitude to God. It's really a powerful thing, wonderful energies. And then what's going to happen? At that point in time, the mentor might be able to carry her and finally break through. Or there might be another person. Jana, come on down. You're voluntold. Thank you very much for volunteering. Yeah. No, stay right there. Stay right there. You guys stay right there. Just Jana, come over there. And she is a helper, a spiritual helper. She might now actually take you and take you for some learning classes or everything else along with your mentor so that you can get some more knowledge about what's going on with you and get the help that you need. Does that make sense? Does it make sense so far? Very simplified. You can put your hands down now. Thank you. Thanks for the energy, though. Now, this is one communication. Did you notice that we have 4 mediums in the room? So how many communications do you think we're going to have? More than 4. It really is going to depend, right? So sit down. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks so much for playing along. I appreciate it. Right? So were you able to visualize? So it's a counseling job for people without a body. Now, the nature of the counseling will vary because the problem will vary. And that takes a lot of effort for the people that are in the meeting to be able to, 1, communicate, be a good vessel for the communicating spirit to make itself known, and to be prepared to counsel the other person in a way that it will not be rude or confrontational. Right? If a spirit comes in, and as we have already had seminars with this at the Federation, did a great job of putting one together on how to actually talk to the spirits, those who are workers and so forth, you're not always going to say, oh, don't worry about it, you're dead. Right? They're going to be, what do you mean I'm dead? I'm not dead. I'm right here talking to you. Right? Because, like, no, you're dead. You're dead. Not how you go about this. Right? It requires a little finesse and training. I've seen this happen. This dialogue that I just told you, I've seen this happen. Right? It's funny, but it's not. Right? But anyway, so you see what I'm saying there? So this is one part of the meeting. And then generally after a while, the groups decide how long it goes for, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe an hour. Then they would do another prayer of gratitude. They might have a communicating mentor, depending how they do it. And then that will be it. After that, our mentors and guides will continue to obviously to work around. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But our mediums would also receive the benefits of the good energy that the mentors and guides are also giving us, because it's not just us doing the work. In fact, let me show you. Let's kind of do this. Let's do this a little bit more, okay? But visually now, so that we can see in different ways. So imagine that this is our table, looking from the top, right? Imagine that you're looking from the top. And imagine then that we have, look at that, our 4 mediums, right? 4 mediums. And then we've also put there our 2 counselors, the dialoguers, whichever name you want to employ, right? And so there they are, 2 of them. In this instance, doesn't mean that it's always 4 or it's always 2. The group will decide. They will see how many pieces they have. I'm just using something so that you can kind of grab on, right? Then we're going to have our 2, look at that, vibrational assistants, I'm calling them, right, to help with the vibrations. And it's very important that everybody, as they are going through this, they are sync up together. You can't be doing this job or any job if something's happening, you're thinking about, oh my God, do I need to do laundry for tomorrow, right? That is the equivalent of somebody in the orchestra playing a different tune. It's harder than you think to keep your mind on focus. It's way harder than what you think. Seems easy, but to stay concentrated on something for 30 minutes to an hour straight, at that level, it takes practice. It takes practice. So we have that, right? And then we talked about our communicating spirits. Let's just pretend for a second that we are only going to have a medium communicate twice per meeting. Just for illustration purposes today. It doesn't mean it's a rule. Again, I'm making conventions up so that we can illustrate. Every group will do their thing, right? So these are the 2 communicating spirits that we talked about, right? So what we're going to have here, in fact, actually, if you think about it, we're going to have 2 communicating spirits per medium for the meeting. In my experience, the meetings I've been to are more, they're 3. Personally, the one that I work at, we cap it at 3 today per medium to make sure that the medium is not overtaxed, right? Because it can be intensive sometimes. And then on top of those that we talked about, right? These are the communicating spirits, the spirits in need, right? So there's 8 of them, right? So right there, just right there, you can see that there's 8 incarnates and that there's 8 discarnates, right? But hey, if you call in the next 10 minutes, you also get, like a bad infomercial, you get more, right? Because it's not just, like we talked about, the spirits in need just did not randomly walk into that meeting. So what we have is, we have their mentors and guides or assistants or whoever who brought them and who care deeply about them. And it's beautiful that somebody is literally helping you, right? So add another 8 in there. So now we have 8 mentors of the communicating spirits, right? Great, that's a lot of people. 16 on one side, 8 on the other, starting to get big, right? But it doesn't stop there. Why? Because how about the mentors and guides of the actual people in the meeting here? They might not be even physically present maybe, but they're paying attention because this is an important moment of work and selfless giving. So they are supporting you. So they might be intuiting you, helping you, guide. So there's another, at least 8 over there, right? See that? Well, it doesn't stop there, because when We also have to have the conductor. And I made him a little bigger here for illustration, but we have somebody on the spiritual realm who is responsible for that meeting, and it will coordinate everything from the spiritual side. So they are the ones who are going to guide us, but they're not acting alone. They also have other assistants who are going to help. Because how do you think that those mentors who are bringing those spirits got there? And what made it so that they could just come in and communicate? First come, first serve basis? No, there's a planning. There's not a sign-up list sheet on the other side, the spiritual side, like who's here first, right? There is a plan. So these other helpers here have been working with the mentors and guides over the weeks to prepare and slot them to come and be matched to the best possible medium to carry out that message, because every medium is different. So we just gained easily another 5 people, right? Just on that piece, easily. There could be more. I'm being conservative here, right? And on top of that, right, I talked about the 4 mentors and assistants, and on top of that, we also might have somebody like we saw that's coming to study. We saw that in the books of Andre Lewis, that they go visit the groups. There's always people coming. I put 1 person here just because. Could be more, could be none, right? 1 soul, I should say, right? This is a visiting student on calling. But it doesn't stop there, because divinity always makes the best use of the resources. And you have to remember that there are not a lot of people on earth in general doing or prepared to do this kind of assistance work, because people are simply not aware of the spiritual world. So these meetings are a wonderful opportunity. So what happens here then is we might have other spirits who are also brought here who have problems and challenges similar to the ones who are communicating, so that by observing, they start to get help. And sometimes these guys who are actually communicating will say that they are with a group of people. So easily, I added another 8 here, 1 for each person, but it's actually more than that. Right? You see the orchestra growing? Okay. Then on top of that, you might also have more spirits who have been brought here and they're not yet at a point, and they're not related to those spirits, but are starting to find out how this thing works and what's going to happen. And they might even have stumbled from across the street, who in turn will get help. So what we have now, very conservatively speaking, is a very different picture. We only see this. We don't see this. Which really means here that we have 8 incarnates, just a term we use for people who have a body, who are in the flesh incarnates. We have roughly 46 discarnates in this meeting of ours, an example here, for a total of 54 souls in a beautiful orchestra. So when we prepare ourselves to do the work, I don't want to scare you, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying is it requires preparation and study, because we are serving a lot of people. So we must prepare ourselves for that. Much the same way you would prepare yourself in the orchestra. Because you've made it into the orchestra does not mean you stop practicing and only show up for the performance. A good musician from the best orchestras are constantly practicing. And what kind of practice does that mean for us who are interested perhaps in taking part in this work? Constant reading, constant working on ourselves, understanding our own challenges to make sure that we are not bad filters if we are the mediums, or that we understand the situation enough to be able to sympathize with the person and extend a loving embrace, spiritually saying. It doesn't mean that we have to know everything about everything. That's not what it means, because as you remember, our spiritual mentors and guides are the ones who really are the expert matter specialists. But we can't leave everything to them. We must apply ourselves to do that. So if you are the violin, you're going to play your violin. You're going to exercise your violin. You're going to learn about the violin. You're going to try to hone your skills in playing the violin. You're going to be constantly checking to see. And you're going to be learning new partitures, new songs and new music, because you won't be playing the same thing all the time. You're going to want to develop the skills to be able to play whatever song comes that day. And it requires a lot of effort and preparation. Oh, Dan, that sounds really discouraging. Well, I don't mean to say it that way. But what I do mean to say is that to be part of that beautiful orchestra, to build that beautiful song or music or symphony, there has to be preparation. And you have to understand what your role is. In the middle of the orchestra, the first violin cannot decide to walk over to the trombone and take it over, because you're going to ruin the meeting. Do you want to play the trombone? Wonderful. Talk about it before you start playing the before the orchestra starts. But if your role that day is to play the violin, you're going to play the violin. Right? Because there is a game plan at work. We just are not visibly seeing it.
Can you develop that thought a little bit more?
Yes. So the roles on the orchestra are very important. And you need different roles. Right? I might really like to be the violin. But the problem is that our orchestra might have 8 people who want to be the violinist. And we might need a violinist, we might need 6 violinists and 2 cello players. So we're going to have to get some of the people who are going to want to play the violin and have them play the cello. Because you cannot have an orchestra just with violins. Does that make sense? Some days you might be asked to play the violin. Some days you might be asked to play the cello by the incarnate director of the meeting. What I didn't put in my little piece there, because I didn't want to be overly complex, is that the spiritual mentor, the conductor on that side, right, he will funnel a lot of his thoughts to the director of that meeting, because there has to be somebody here on this side of life that will coordinate, because otherwise it can get confusing for the members, right? So one suggestion is that there is one of the people, incarnates in the meeting, who is guiding the meeting, saying, okay, it's time to start, we're going to make a prayer, and kind of directs things. He might help decide which counselor talks to which spirit based on intuition, and there's all kinds of things that we don't want to get overly complex because it's a piece here, but it takes effort and preparation. But we need all roles. And it might be that you're a wonderful violin player, but you might not be good that day. And so that day, you might sit out and not play that instrument because you're not feeling great about it. And you might say, you know what, I'm having a tough day today. I don't know if I will be a good counselor today because I'm really trapped in my own challenges. And it will be hard for me to detach myself from my challenges and talk. Can I be on support today? Or we can say, hey, I noticed that you're not doing so great lately. Do you want to maybe, take another role for the day? Because what matters that day is not how well you play the violin. Because, sorry to break it to us, we're not the brightest spot in the universe. The problem is not, the purpose is not for us to get there and become the best violinist ever in that orchestra or in the world. It's for us to have a wonderful orchestra, because it has to work as a body if we want to produce the music, right? And we can't do that if we were that one-man band that we talked about. Remember that? That guy? See if I can go back. Anyways, but you remember him, right? So when we work in groups, it allows for all this to happen. It is sometimes hard because as an individual, it's great to do whatever it is that we please. But if we're serious about the quality of music we're producing, we have to hone our skills in an orchestra. And that means we have to constantly decide what is it that we're going to do, be in contact with our team players, have good relationships with the orchestra members, which is part of the learning process. Is you don't have to be best friends. You don't have to love them. You just have to work well with them. Set aside any things that you have to be able to grow. And sometimes the way an orchestra grows and gets better is by soliciting feedback from its members. So after the meeting, what is likely to happen, and is a great suggestion, I feel, is to debrief what happened during that meeting. So you can say, you know what? I think you did a great job on the violin today, or your cello was out of tune today, or you came in a little too early, or let me tell you a little bit about this part of the music that I hear and that you weren't hearing, right? So there's all kinds of learning that goes on, but it can only take place if there's it's an environment of trust and commitment to playing the music. Because if it becomes about the instruments or the players, then it doesn't work well. But if it's about the music, then it's wonderful. Then you grow so much. And it could be that today you play the violin. It could be that tomorrow you play the trombone. And you just decide that you like better, that it happens that way. The important piece is to be a member of the orchestra, because that music is really what touches the heart of people. And in doing that, we also get to learn about others. That is the really wonderful thing. Think about it. When you are seeing it first case, these challenges, and you're talking to them or giving way or channeling the Spirit, you are living that example. So whatever trial and tribulation they have, it becomes real for you. So you learn too. If you're counseling somebody on being more spiritual and abandoning their physical vices, you are going to be more mindful of that because you just talked about it. So now you know what course of action you should take in your own life. And sometimes you're going to have difficult conversations where sometimes the Spirit might be discarnate, waiting for a while to communicate, because it's just not as easily as clicking people in, right? Remember how the mentor brought the Spirit in need? Well, sometimes the mentor and the Spirit in need are already near the medium for a couple of days before the meeting, so that they can start to build some affinity, so it becomes easier for them to communicate. So the Spirit will see what the medium is doing. And then when time comes and you're counseling and you're talking about the stuff and you say, oh, you need to be more tolerant, and the Spirit says, but you weren't tolerant on Tuesday. And you're like, oops. Right? So there's all kinds of conversations and counselings. And there will be some spirits that are combative. But regardless, the interesting piece here is it benefits all of us to play as an orchestra. And that is why we do the work together. And that's why we build a team like Christ built a team. So that we can sustain each other in a way that if one of us is faltering or is not doing great that day for whatever reason, because guess what? We're human. We are going to have other people to lift us up. And it's also easier to maintain our dedication when we have a group of people together. Because if you're that one-man band, you might start to have your confidence erode. And you decide, I don't want to do this anymore. Right? And then that nice work of helping others is gone, and you also lose an opportunity to help others. So coming together, as hard as it may be, benefits all of us, the incarnates and the discarnates. Must we have discarnates for this work to take place? No. The truth is, God does not need us to carry forward the work. But it's an opportunity for us to learn, and we may help speed up the learning process. Because some of our friends, because of the type of lifestyle that we live in our society, where we are unable to remind ourselves often that we are spirits first, are completely ignorant to the fact that life goes on. And when they get to the other side, they have a surprise. What happened? I thought I was going to disappear. How am I still alive? Did I not die? It seems silly, but these are day-to-day trials and challenges that folks who have lost or shed their mortal coil, as Shakespeare says in Hamlet, right, have left their body and now find themselves in the spirit world, are struggling with because they don't know what to do. So having somebody to talk to counsel, is great. And this might seem interesting and sometimes unexpected for a lot of folks, but not all spirits see all spirits. There could be two spirits in the same place, but because their mind is at a different level, they're not registering their mentor or guide there. And so they still think that they're alive, and so what they're looking for is people on our level, so they see us. And then when we tell them to pay attention to the spiritual world, they start to open their mind up, because their mind is so powerful. We're our minds. Then they start to register the help that was always there all of a sudden. And it's so touching. It is so beautiful when you see that soul that was so hardened or hurt, recognize all of a sudden that their family members who are passed are there caring for them. The transformations that take place and the tears of joy and love that are shed by the mediums and everybody in the room, it's something so sublime that is hard to explain. You feel the love of God in that moment when you see a mom coming for a child that has passed, or you see a child welcoming a mother that didn't know that she had passed away. There's so many different scenarios and so many different things, but one thing is always present, an incredible amount of love that we only begin to understand when we realize the power and the presence of the spiritual world, the positive spiritual world in our lives. We are bombarded with so many different things and so many different things in our day-to-day world that we forget. And then in these meetings we see it. You see humanity at its best. It's indescribable. It's indescribable. And surprisingly, these things stick with you. I vividly remember conversations with specific spirits that have marked my life in such a way that I've developed an emotional connection with a person that I never met or that I don't recall ever meeting. And they have touched me more deeply than relationships that I've had for dozens of years here. Because in those 5 or 10 minutes, we have connected in such a way, so earnestly and so beautifully, that it's a wonderful thing. And that's why we do the work, because the music makes us. When you start to play and you feel it, the music, the beauty of that act of coming together transforms those who play. And it's a fantastic thing. And you learn so much. You learn so much, right? And we do that as a team because He came to do that He taught us. And we see in the beautiful Gospel of John, that mystical gospel that has so many wonderful teachings that are perhaps more poetic than the Gospels of Mark, Luke, and Matthew. We see in John 14 that Jesus says, "Verily, truly, I tell you, whoever believes in me," and by that we mean believes in the Word of God and the teachings of God, because Christ wasn't worried about His persona. He was passing on the message, but He was vivifying it. Whoever believes in all of that will do the works that I have been doing, because He had also been talking and counseling spirits. If you go back and you read the New Testament, you're going to find many instances of counseling and spiritually changes that take place. And they will do even greater things than these, because I am going to the Father. So He's saying, all the things that I've done, all the counseling, all the helping that I've done spiritually, you will do and more as I go back to my work in the spirituality, and now it's time for you to pick up your piece of the work in general. And it is His calling, the calling of spirituality, that we answer through times, because who is to say, who amongst us can say that we were not the ones who were in the receiving end when we needed in a past life? Who is to say that we were not the ones who were helped by a group of committed individuals that took some of their time and effort to host us temporarily in their physical presence, so that we could speak with somebody that was incarnate and find our way back into the knowledge that we are immortal beings? Who is to say that we have not received that love before? We can't, because we have. Maybe not in this format. Maybe not in this time. But it is up to us to make space in our heart for these wonderful teachings of Jesus, so that we can start to pay back to the universe that has given us so much. And God is so glorious and so wonderful and so loving that God lets us do that and make that process so joyous and so happy. How can there be a kinder God than a God that lets us make up for our shortcomings in the past by working and helping others and truly enjoying and being happy while we're doing it? It's incredible. It really is. And that's why we do the work. We do the work because it transforms our lives, not because it transforms the lives of others. It helps. But the truth is, we are the ones who learn the most. How can we deny all of this when we let them use our voices to share their problems, when we give them advice on how to best act? How can we ignore the spiritual world when that happens? People may still be doubtful. Does this really happen? Does the spiritual world exist? That is okay. That is for them to decide. Once you embark on this route, you are touched and modified with this, and you see every single week proof of everything else that you have studied before. You see cases that you couldn't possibly have imagined. You see mediums communicating, having a spirit communicate, and then 5 minutes later have a completely different spirit communicate, completely different, where you know that cannot possibly be an invention of the medium because they're so different, and they communicate they have different ways of speaking and talking and so forth. That is so important, and that is why then within the Spiritist perspective, we leverage only some types of mediumship, because the mediumship of assistance, it's made easier by a specific set of types of mediumship. So we call it oftentimes psychophony, which is the ability to let the spirit use your voice to communicate, right? That's easier than letting them, for instance, use psychometry or psychography. Psychography is the act of actually let them write through your hands. You can imagine that a spirit in need writing down the questions or the problems, and you counseling them goes a lot slower. So it's not as effective. So we generally tend, within the restorative part of Spiritism, to focus on psychophony as a way for us to help those who are in need communicate quickly. Now, we can still use clairvoyance, and people can still see the spirit, and that's great, but you don't need to see. But oftentimes our training will go into that direction. It does not mean that you don't do psychography if you want to in a meeting, but the assistance piece is best helped by these types of mediumship, right? And we can have meetings for different purposes. We can try to make the meetings of whatever purpose we want. We can try to make meetings just for the receiving your messages, for guidance, or sometimes what we call de-obsession, which really is the work of counseling when two people are not getting along together, right? But the truth is, we can decide whatever it is that we want to do. But ultimately, it is not us who decides. It is the conductor. Decides whether the orchestra is fit to play that song. And that is what is really hard sometimes, because we have expectations of what we want mediumship to do. And it's not us to decide how mediumship works for us. Providence, divine providence, which knows what's best for us, has already decided what kind of mediumistic abilities, if any, we're going to have in this lifetime. Our duty is to understand how to best leverage what we have to grow and serve. So a lot of times we want our mediumship to be this or that, or do this or that, but it's not us who really decides how that's going to take place. We can't force spirit communication. It's been said by the great Brazilian medium Francis Xavier that mediumship is kind of like a phone. You can call the other side, but what are they going to pick up? It's not up to you. There are moments in time where a medium might struggle communicating. And that might be a moment, that might be a period of time for reflection, for self-realization, for a lot of things, and that's okay too. But all of this has to be married with commitment, discipline, and desire to help. And it's a wonderful thing when you come together as a group to do it. And it's truly, truly, truly a beautiful thing when we're able to do that. So, before we take questions, I want to loop back a little bit and make time for our main points again, and hope that today you have gotten a little bit of an introduction about what is mediumship, which is the ability to act as an intermediary between the two realms of life. And hopefully the most important message for me today is to make sure you understand that mediumship is not a gift to select few, but quite opposite. It is a manifestation of God's love for us, that it happens so that we can grow in understanding and in the practice of love. And that if we want to, we can leverage all the knowledge that Spiritism has brought us through 160 years of research and practice to better understand how this interaction between worlds takes place, whether it be just for our own lives and understand how we may be influenced by the actions and thoughts of others, and how we influence the thoughts and actions of others, or to try to take the next step and lend ourselves to be instruments in the work of helping others in this spiritual manner, which we don't have to do if you don't want to. You're not forced. Nobody's going to judge you less if you don't. It's a choice, like everything else we do. But if you decide to do it, we're saying, then you might be really well served by the knowledge that we have in Spiritism. Because I don't see any other body of knowledge, any other philosophy that has spent so much time in understanding mediumship, how it works, and how it can be used to service others as Jesus intended, we believe, as Spiritism has. And that is why I'm still convinced to this day that perhaps the greatest gift Spiritism will give to the world and to other religions and denominations and philosophies is to give them this manual that they can use to understand the interactions between the physical world and the material world, and have these communications, if they so choose, whichever faith, motto, idea, philosophy they believe in. And so we hope that we take those with us, and we hope that more and more you have the ability to kind of zoom out a little bit and reflect on what mediumship is for you. How does it affect your life? And how can it make you better understand the world so that you can be happier? And that is my sincere desire. I want to thank you for your time. And I'm going to pause briefly, and then we will do some questions and answers. But from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank you for the opportunity one more time to be with you, to talk to such an important topic, because again, I'm the one who learns the most. Selfishly, it's not you. It's me. Sorry, I'm selfish. Right? Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. All right. Any questions before we go to try to go through our list again? Yeah. Oh, did we write them down? No, we're just going to do them live, right? Let's go for it. Yeah, I'm just going to repeat so that those people who may be listening to us in the spiritual world called Facebook might hear.
During these mediumistic meetings, is it possible to counsel people they are actually incarnate, but they're sleeping somewhere in the world, and they come?
That's a great question. Yes, it is. The Spirit books tells us, if you go back to the Spirit books, that during that detachment from the body, it may happen. It is very rare for that to happen. Thank you so much for the reminder. The question is, you had just reminded before, and I just totally forgot because I forget things. The question was, is it possible that during those mediumistic meetings, we may actually counsel the spirits of those who are still incarnate? Yes. It has happened before. I have done this a couple of times. People who are either like sleeping at a time during a difficult time. It's really an exceptional piece of people who are in coma. I have also done that before. There's all kinds of different scenarios because we're not limited to formulas. That's why it's important for us to understand the spiritual world. And there's no formula for a mediumistic meeting. The team will come together, the orchestra will come together under the auspices of the group, the Spiritist Society, and decide how their meetings will take place. And this is one of the great benefits of coming to a Spiritist group, is because you get to find other like-minded individuals who want to do the work, but who are different. And then you learn and you build that orchestra together. It's a beautiful process. It really is. It really is. Thank you.
What is the subject which comes out the most in order to, let's say, elevate the consciousness of
what will be a trend or like of a guiding theme that we see often? Is that what you see? Well, yeah, that's a hard one. But I would say, at the risk of being cliche, of being loving and kind and considerate to each other. Everything else is a manifestation of that. And I think that the mediumistic meeting is the manifestation of that idea, of us taking our time to help, to the extent that we can, people we do not know. And we see all kinds of challenges in meetings, and I think people who participate in meetings will tell you that it really depends from meeting to meeting. It depends on the group, depends on the place, depends on the time. But there are all kinds of topics and issues because the trials and the dilemmas that we human beings go through are varied, are many. There might be some common underlying themes of like relationships that are gone sour, regret, shame, all kinds of things, like they're human in nature, but how they manifest are going to be different. And that's why it's great that if you want to do the work, to really practice and train with people who have that experience, because it will really go a long way. Right? That's why, for instance, the Federation put together another seminar that took place on how to actually do that counseling, how to have the communication and so forth. So if you're interested in that work and more, I urge you to go talk to your Spiritist group and see if they have that work in place and say, hey, what are the prerequisites for me to join the group? Can I learn more about it? You know, because I would be surprised if they let you just walk into a meeting. Right? They don't, because you have to prepare yourself. If they do, then maybe you're not in a good place. Right? Sorry to say that. Hope that I didn't offend anybody. But if anybody can walk into that meeting, Jen, I mean, there's some exceptions, right? There's some great exceptions. But as a rule of thumb, I wouldn't want to walk into a situation that you're not prepared to walk into. Right?
First of all, thank you. You were really, really good.
Ah, it's so kind of you.
I belong to the first English group that we're getting together to do this on Wednesdays. And I want to stress, really, we've been together for like 5 or 6 years studying and doing this over and over again. And it's really, really, really difficult because, you know, you really have to get to know each other well because of the situation, like you said. And it's not an overnight thing. It's you know, it's like really, really
Yeah.
A lot of studying and a lot of concentration. And I'm not even there yet, but this was really good. I almost didn't come because I thought, yeah, you know, I've already read everything he's going to say, but I did learn a lot.
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, I think the comment was, you know, it takes time. There are people here who have been studying 3, 4, 5 years before they actually start doing that, or more. And that it also takes study to get there and to stay there, right? Again, to use the example of the orchestra, for you to be admitted to the orchestra, you know you have to practice. But once you're in the orchestra, you don't get to just play when there's performance. You got to practice to maintain that level of skill and dexterity, right?
I know you already mentioned on your lecture, but tell us about a little bit more. For example, before all this knowledge about mediumistic meetings, how the spirituality deals with the suffering. So,
It's a great
just
question.
elaborate a little bit.
Very philosophical, very beautiful question of how does spirituality deals or has dealt with challenges before there were mediumistic meetings in this format, right? Because again, mediumistic meetings in the Spiritist way of taking place have really started since the 1860s when Spiritism came about. So this format that we continue to develop is really new and is still very unknown because Spiritists are still a very small slice of the world, right? But again, it does not mean that spiritual work has not been happening forever in a day. The format might have been different, but if we look throughout history, you're going to find that there's all kind of mediumistic working taking place in different places, and still to this date, we are going to have some rescue work. Sometimes spiritualists call it meetings are somewhat similar, but they're different. We're going to find shamans also doing this work quite a bit in different ways. So there's all different kinds of manifestations of how this work takes place. Now, mind you, this work has always existed on a spiritual side. Again, one more time, we are not the fundamental piece in that assistance effort. We are just the players on the orchestra. If we're not doing great, there are going to be other players. The orchestra, the divine orchestra goes on. I'm not putting us down. I am not saying that you're going to be fired from your job. You're fired. No. I am saying we understand our proper place in this great orchestra to put us in check and not let our aspirations and our desires to be meaningful overtake the facts. So the spiritual work has always taken place because God has always assisted God's children. Now we're glad that we're getting to a phase in our spiritual evolution where we are maturing a little bit more, and as spiritual adolescents, we can start to give back. But that work has always happened. The challenge is it was not readily accessible to anybody who it happened. If we see the Book of the Dead back in Egypt, they have spirit communication. The Book of the Dead was a manual on how to get to the afterlife. Well, how can you get to the afterlife? How can somebody tell you how to get there unless they've been there? And if they've been to the afterlife, then how do they get back to you? So mediumistic communication has always existed. Like I show you the picture of the oracles, right, the sibyls and so forth. They had different names. Not all these meetings, though, were always centered on assisting others. Throughout time, we have tried, as good humans that we are, fallible, we have tried to benefit from mediumistic communications to our own material benefit. So we have seen the selling of spiritual communications, the charging for spiritual work, because I would venture that we haven't quite fully realized the extent of the orchestra. Because once we realize that we go beyond the physical body, then charging for work here means we don't get payment there. I'd rather take my payment on the other side. You can't double dip. You can't double dip. You can't get paid twice for the work, right? So because my spiritual debt is high, I would like to chip away at the interest by having the payments of whatever coins I'm getting here to pay my spiritual mortgage. Right? Right? And so within the Spiritist practice, that's our perspective. And it really is not meant to be a dig at any other denomination or person. That's not it. It's just that we choose to do that this way because we really want to do that. And I think that another benefit of not charging, for instance, is the credibility is higher too. So it's easier to do the work because sometimes the spirits will come and tell us, like, why should I believe you? Right? If I were getting paid to do that, he'd say, why should I believe you? You're getting paid to do this. But when I'm not getting paid, I can say, what am I asking in return? I am trying to help you and giving you some guidance here, and I ask for nothing in return. That gives you the credibility to do the work. And I can say, then, I do that because the Christ did that too. And that's who I want to be like. And that changes the conversation. So I have a little bit more credibility to speak on behalf of the Christ. And it's not a personal thing. I'm not trying to convince you to do something because I want you to do something. I am trying to get out of my way so that you can do something. And it's a beautiful thing. And I wonder if sometimes that's not why Paul said that it's not I who live, it is the Christ who lives in me. Because we start to understand the greatness of things and we try to emulate and be part of this wonderful divine orchestra that plays on forever without ever stopping for a break. We're just an act, a first part of one orchestra playing when many beautiful orchestras are playing throughout. It is humbling in the most beautiful way possible. This work is incredibly rewarding. I wish I could do justice. But because of my lack of ability to put into words the sublime feelings that the Christ has enabled us to start to feel little by little, as we climb our way towards spiritual awareness, I do a disservice to the cause. I wish with time, if you want to, that you have the opportunity to partake in something that, if you've ever been with somebody you care and you've helped them out of the kindness of your heart and you felt good afterwards, you begin to understand why we do the work. Right? Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Was that closer to what you're thinking about, Marcelo? Do you want to say some words?
No, that's exactly.
Yeah?
Because I wanted to people know exactly the meaning of this. This is actually help us more to understand with the suffering of others.
Yes.
And it becomes, and you mentioned this in your lecture, but I just wanted to.
Yeah, it's such an important point. Empathy. It helps us develop empathy towards others. When you walk a mile in their shoes, you begin to understand this concept of divine family that we talked about, spiritual family. And it's really beautiful in many ways. I don't think there are days when I leave a Spiritist mediumistic meeting, which I'm part of every week, and I get in my car to drive back home, that I don't go home reflecting on something meaningful that has touched me that day.
We learn more than.
Yeah, it's an amazing, beautiful thing, and that sustains me in different ways, because it's also, like I said, a reminder that I am a spirit too. So next time when I am complaining about my shortcomings or whatever it is, I start to put things into perspective too a little bit, and saying, thank you, God, for my problems. Because our problems are sometimes really wonderful problems. And we begin to see there's an opportunities to grow. And we also reminded that when we are in trouble or we have problems, that there are others who are willing to assist us. We just don't see them sometimes, but we can't look for them. It's a beautiful thing. Anyways, I digress. I want to stop there really quickly, because you know me. If you put a mic in front of me, I will keep going. I will keep going, because at home I can't do that. My wife shuts me down. So I am going to take up. She's not here. I'm just kidding. But does that make sense? I want to look over our things here to see if there's something else that we talked about. So we talked briefly about mental health and schizophrenia, and we know that, right, it's not always the case, but there's a role there for spirituality to play. Educating myself on mediumship, it's a long process, and you ought to be, because everything that it's ever worth it was hard. Anything that comes easily, we don't value properly. And it's an ongoing process, just like the orchestra, the musician in the orchestra. We must continue to hone our skills even after we've been admitted into the orchestra. So it's a lifelong learning. Not to be part of the orchestra, but to be a good musician. Right? What do I do if I'm a medium? Well, it is up to you. At the very least, it might be good for you to understand how the mechanism of mediumship works, so that you can decide how to best live your life. If you are so willing and so inclined, we invite you. Come work with us. Go to your Spiritist group, talk to the folks in charge, and talk to them. I would like to be a part. How can I do that? What kind of learning must I take? Even if you don't want to be part of a meeting, or you're not an ostensive medium or a counselor, you can still be part of it or not at all. But you will be better, I venture, by understanding how mediumship works. Right? Are there requirements for practice? In the Spiritist group, yes. In life, no. You can do whatever you want to with your ability to talk to the spirits, or understand them or not. It's up to you. Within the Spiritist context, and I hope that I've made that point, there are things that we do because our experience, our collective experience over time, has helped us understand that it might be better as a team sport. I'm going to rephrase, that it is better as a team sport. Because we have the support of others, we have different perspectives, we grow together, we see things with others that otherwise we would not have seen for ourselves or by ourselves. So we all gain from working with others on that. But what you do with it, it's up to you. If you're a medium, must you work in mediumship? That's your choice. You don't have to. You decide. Right? That's my take on it, at least. How about the extent of the influence of the spirits? I think that question 459 gives a good practice again. There's a lot, more than we imagine. And it's not all scary. It's actually the opposite. We wouldn't be here today were it not for the good influence of spirits. They have helped us plan this life before we came. They check in with us at night every once in a while to see how we're doing. We don't remember that. They inspire us. They guide us. They remind us of our plans. They love us. They support us. They make up for our shortcomings. And even when we falter, they continue to love us beyond belief. So beyond our ability to understand is their influence. And that's a good thing. If only we remember that there's way more positive in our lives than that is negative. That's hard to do, still. But if you do that, then we'll see that the extent of the influence of the spirits is great. And are there different types of mediumship? Yeah. There are different types of mediumship. We just, on the assistance work, we focus on a couple of them because they lend themselves really well for helping others in that manner. But there are many other kinds of mediumship that you can practice and work. But you're going to find that a lot of the mediumistic activity that takes on Spiritism is focused towards those types, right, that I talked about, psychophony and psychometry, psychography a little bit as well. But there are others, and you can investigate those for sure. You can find a lot of that in the Medium's book, the wonderful book. It's not always the most exciting book in the world to read, let's be honest, because it's a reference book. It's not a story, right? So it's hard. But it's because it is hard that is worth it, because there's a lot of good stuff in there. And there's a lot of other books that come on top of that that benefit us as well. But it's always good for you to consult and read every once in a while. And I tell you, I've read it a couple of times and I keep going back to it every once in a while. Because there are things that I didn't quite catch or that I need myself reminded. It's really great. I mean, for the first treatise ever on mediumship, it's amazing. And of course, that work can continue to be augmented by any other of the wonderful works that we have around mediumship within the Spiritist context. Many of them we find in English, which is wonderful. And so it's an ongoing learning process. Just like Spiritism is progressive, it's always growing, so are we. And so should be our craft, so to speak, of studying Spiritism. We must continue to study all the time, because now we know that there's no such thing as being too old, which is a common excuse. Too old. How are you too old? You're going to come back again. Start now, chop, chop, go, right? So that you have less to do last time around. So continue to go, continue to grow, and that will be wonderful. Does that make sense? I think that we try to address all of these. We are reaching our time. One more time, I would like to thank you for your presence. I would especially like to thank the Spiritist Federation of Florida for putting this event together in general. One, because I really like to see you guys, so thank you. But two, because it's such an important topic, and this idea of making this available for whoever would like to, it's to be commended. So we really thank the Spiritist Federation of Florida for doing that and trying to continue to foment and grow the awareness of mediumship and spirituality in general. We also want to thank our hosts here, who have so graciously allowed us to come here and have the Federation do the event here. I'm not part of the Spiritist Federation of Florida, although I really want to be adopted one day. But I want to thank you anyways, because you guys signed the papers. But because you guys have graciously let us come in here, and obviously for all of you taking the space here with us learning, and specifically, if I may, I also want to extend my personal gratitude, and I hope to speak on your behalf too, to all our wonderful spiritual helpers and assistants who are here with us today and always, as we have seen in our divine orchestra, and who continue to inspire us even when we fail to see them. Just because we don't see them does not mean they're not there. Quite the opposite. Those are the selfless workers of the Christ who perform any and all work, making up for our shortcomings without ever for a second requiring any kind of acknowledgement. That is a beautiful thing. And so to them, and to our older brother, the Christ, who continues to call us through the ages, that we may awaken to the idea that we live beyond our physical body. And I believe dearly that was his message when he died at the cross for us and resurrected, to show us that life will not end with the death of the physical body. I cannot think of a more beautiful message that God can send us through the times than to assure us constantly and repeatedly that we will outlive this moment in time, which sometimes may seem so hard to us. It's just a second. Hang in there. It will get better. And that while we do it, we will find so much joy that it will move us to gratitude and tears beyond our wildest understanding today. And how wonderful it is that we can do this together. How wonderful that along the way we can make new friends, and this new challenge of facing spirituality and understanding that support each other. It's just a wonderful thing. So I'm eternally grateful to all of you and to God for the chance to be reminded one more time that no matter what, life never ends. Thank you so much, and I hope to see you soon.